Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start. Welcome to the November edition of Show and Tell presented by our global team here at FS. I will be your host today. I'm Michael Fisher, the VP of Menswear. I'm joined by some of my colleagues all around the world as we are going to present to you some of the things that are currently inspiring us. For those of you that joined before, you kind of know how it goes. This is just a little glimpse behind the scenes of the way that we kind of forecast trends here at FS. Oftentimes it starts with just basically finding common threads through various bits of culture. And so that's what we tend to do at Show and Tell. Every meeting is very different, as you know, and we just kind of are going to flow through and see what things are in our current zeitgeist. We will do this again the first Wednesday of the month. So the next meeting for Show and Tell will be Wednesday, December 1st. You can always find this meeting and all of our previous ones on our YouTube channel. So check there if you miss anything today. Before we jump into today's links, I'm actually going to turn it over to our Director of Marketing, Ashley, and she's going to talk about a very exciting event. You all know it. You all love it. Trend Immersion. We'll be doing it next week. So Ashley's going to tell you more about that.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So as Michael said, I just wanted to remind you that there are just 6 days left to register for our Spring Summer 23 Digital Trend Immersion. So that's taking place next Tuesday, the 9th of November. So if you're not familiar with it, this is our most loved digital event. It's an interactive online seminar run by our editors. They'll take you through everything you need to know for the season and connect the dots from culture through to product. So you'd also have the opportunity to join breakout rooms where we'll address market-specific product shifts and answer any of your questions as well. So these breakout rooms will cover men's, women's, youth, kids, active, beauty and wellness, intimates and swim, home and accessories. The whole event will last 2.5 hours, running from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's free to attend for clients, $125 per person for non-clients, and that includes access to the recording as well. So you can attend on demand if needed, but do try and attend live if possible because it's a great opportunity for you to answer and ask any of your questions. So you can register now by going to our website. You'll see the banners up there. They're everywhere. You can't miss them. So yeah, don't miss it. So that's it from me. I will hand back over to Michael to kick off this show and tell.
Great, thanks, Ashley. And Ashley, some of our team members are saying they're having issues with video. So if you could just turn that on for all of them so we can see their beautiful faces as we go through today's meeting.
I'll look into that now.
Thank you. All right, so let me just take this down and we are going to get started, everyone. So we actually have a really awesome special guest with us today. I'm gonna let Jenna, our VP of Content Strategy, introduce Lauren. Hi, Jenna.
Hey, Michael. Thank you, everyone. I think my video isn't able to turn on right now, but I'll begin the introduction nonetheless. So as Michael said, there we go. I'm very excited to introduce a good friend and personal brain crush of mine, Lauren Ducrey. She is an incredible wordsmith and poet who has a book coming out, her first book coming out later this month. So I invited her on today to kind of give us a little insight to the new book and read one of her poems. So I know we have a lot to get through today and I don't want to steal too much of Lauren's thunder. So Lauren, if you wanted to quickly just give us a quick introduction into who you are and a little bit about your book before you go into your poem, that would be great.
Sure, thank you. I think my video's off as well. And I'm a bit of a
Hold on, we're gonna get that turned on for you. Just a second. Hold on, Lauren. Ashley's gonna get that handled for you so we can see you. Hold on.
Love it. Full disclosure, I work for Google, so I'm a total Zoom noob and we have no idea how to do this.
I have made Lauren a co-host, so you should be able to turn on the video. Just bear with me one sec.
I think it's on now.
There we go.
Perfect. We can see you.
Beautiful. Thank you for the intro, Jenna, and thank you to the whole team here for having me. It's a really nice way to break my day. Before I go into telling you a bit about myself, I'd love to just kind of put a question out there to all of you that you can kind of silently answer for yourselves. And that question is, what is your relationship to poetry? So maybe just take a moment to think about the last time you interacted with poetry, how it makes you feel, maybe confused, maybe you love it. Just kind of take a mental note of what poetry brings up for you. And I asked that question because in lieu of introduction, I'd love to tell you a bit about the beginning of my relationship to poetry, which wasn't particularly inspiring, actually. It all started with reciting poems by heart in primary school, and I grew up in France, so this was a very kind of like strict methodical practice that we had. And so it was more about memorizing poems than it was about feeling inspired by them or their artfulness, right? And then in high school and university, I majored in literature and linguistics, and loved interacting with the worlds of fiction, but it was also more about analyzing the poems through commentary, essays, dissertations, things like that, which again kept the poetry kind of removed from my personal individual experience, and it still felt quite esoteric, untouchable, a bit like mysterious. And I feel like talking to people, this experience is somewhat common. And my relationship changed when I started practicing poetry, I'd say about my mid-20s, and I stumbled upon poetry journaling. Some of you might be familiar with Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. Basically, it's a whole book about finding kind of your creative path and inspiration. And one of the practices that she suggests is every morning you wake up and you write 3 pages freehand or 750 words if you're typing. And so I started doing that. And at the end of those 750 words, I found myself playing with words. I broke away from like the narrative of like, I dreamt of this, I did this yesterday. And I was playing with the sound of words, with the rhythm, almost like something that was reminiscent of like a nursery rhyme. And I was like, okay, this is something different. And that's how I started to experience a few big ways in which I personally believe poetry can foster a sense of playfulness, like connect us with playfulness. Also, kind of afford self-knowledge and even foster a sense of deep connection to others that can lead to a sense of belonging. And I'll unpack that a bit because I realize there's a lot in there. Regarding the playfulness part, I think that almost more than other literary genres, poetry really plays with rules, right? It plays with punctuation, it plays with grammar, it plays with formatting. And then through that play, it kind of defies our more rational mind, right? Like a poem without any punctuation, which is something that's quite common, might be frustrating to like the very ordered mind that wants things to be, in a certain way. But that's the whole point, right? Is that it triggers something in us, whether you're writing a poem and you're like, this poem just like feels like it needs to be free of full stops. Okay, like why? Like, why do you feel that need to get rid of punctuation? And if you're reading it, same thing. It's like, what does this lack of punctuation elicit in me? Is it frustrating? Is it moving? And so in a way, poems become a mirror for us as readers, which again made me realize like, whoa, poetry doesn't have to be so esoteric. Like whatever a poem makes me feel, if it makes me feel like I don't get it, that tells me something about myself. So there's value in that mirroring. And then I've also had this experience, which I hope that some of you have had, whether with poetry or other art forms. It's sometimes I'll read a poem and I'll be like, wow, this poem has managed to put into words an experience that I've had, or sometimes an experience that I wasn't even really aware I had. And in doing that makes me feel like understood by a piece of literature. And I find that amazing. And therefore it makes me feel like less alone and like affords that sense of belonging that I mentioned earlier. So again, these are all the things that led me to write my first book, which is called Tongues Tied, in reference to the fact that I grew up bilingual, so like between two languages, French and English, but also with in relation to my fascination with words, full stop, and how we use them in conversation. Like I actually find it quite amazing that as humans we can communicate as well as we do with words, because there's so much space for misinterpretation. And actually, that's kind of a perfect segue into the poem I'm going to read. But before I get into that, sorry, Tongues Tied, I guess, also gestures to how strongly I feel about bringing poetry into conversation with other art forms and kind of bringing it off the page, also in that same dynamic of making poetry just more accessible, right? Because like my relationship was like, oh, this isn't so esoteric and so like removed, like everybody can get something from reading or writing poetry. And so I worked with an artist and a graphic designer to make this book. I can give you a little preview here. So there's a bunch of artwork in it that kind of turns it into, gives other doors, I think, for readers who might not instinctively feel comfortable with poetry to enter the book through visuals. But back to the poem that I'd love to share with you today. It is kind of all about the difficulty of communicating, I think, especially with people that we're close to, how words can be duplicitous. But from that acknowledgement that communication is so complicated, how can we find ways to step in other people's shoes to get out of that kind of like, I just want to be right in a conversation or in an argument, and try to find common ground. So the poem is called Cross Swell. And a cross swell is actually a natural phenomenon where there's two weather systems that are very far away from one another, and they'll create these tides in the water that when they converge, they create this really beautiful kind of like webbing of the water. It's beautiful to see. It's kind of like a grid, but it's actually really dangerous if you're in the water. So cross swell. Why? A double-edged word. Why? A mind can both wield curious enquiry and inquisitive demand. The sound of sincerity sometimes rings off key. A voice slips Freudian, crystal breaks out of tune. My mind is a coin I no longer want to flip, eyes closed, fingers crossed, hoping it lands on tails rather than on the head of an argument. Why? Control cloaked in a question, misses the mark, hits soft flesh, pangs with pain inflamed by duplicitous words, well-intentioned, heavy with tension. When you argue the orange is green, let me ask, why? Let me candidly inspect the enfolding of perception, how you peel back thick skin. Listen to the crinkle of things unwrapped. An angry ball of paper or an origami of thought. Layers of intricately pleated paper reveal a map of the world I know not how to read. It must be felt. A soft fumble finds meridians drawn from scars, hugged by an equator of fear. 20,000 leagues under, I see the crust of your core crest with the beat of affection. Anchors with teeth dug deep rust, solitary in endless tides. Instead of trying to make the compass point in my direction, let it spin for both of us to meet in the middle of where we've never been. When two waves converge, their ripples braid the sea. Thank you for listening. And my book officially comes out next Thursday, November 11th. And I can share some like links and info with Jenna if ever you'd like to join the launch event or just get a sneak peek at the book on my website, etc. Such a pleasure sharing this with you all today.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That was so amazing. And even just the introduction into reconceptualizing words, which of course is a big piece of what we do, and thinking through visual narratives and translating them also in the same dialect, I think really gives a lot of inspiration to, I think, not only what we do, but I think a lot of people in the audience as well from a creative communication perspective.
Love it. Thank you.
So much for joining us. And I'm going to put in Lauren's website in the chat. So if anyone wants to find out more information on her book, again, as she mentioned, it's still for pre-order right now. It launches later this month. But again, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for the invite, and thanks for everybody's time and attention. My pleasure.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Lauren. We are lovers of words here, so this hit right today. Thank you so much for that. And yes, everyone check out the links. I know Jenna is going to put them in the chat box. I just also want to encourage you guys as we go through today, we love dialogue. So please let us know what resonates with you in the chat box. Tell us things you're questioning. Let us know if you want any additional information. But this is how we all learn from each other. So we're going to kick it off today after that beautiful, beautiful poem with Chelsea, who looks like she is in our New York headquarters today. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, Michael. Yes, I'm Chelsea. I am here in the New York office. First and foremost, thank you, Lauren. That was beautiful and such a nice way to start this. Hard to follow, but I'll give you a few little links that I have today. So the first one is a Twitter that I found recently. I came across, someone retweeted it on my timeline. It's called the Article Finder Network. And basically it's like crowdsourced information for academics who are looking for articles or pieces of literature that they need for research that they're doing. So basically you can tweet to the Article Finder Network, they'll retweet it to their audience, and anyone who has access to something specific that you're looking for can help you find access or grant you access to it as well. So I thought that was really great. It's a great crowdsourced form of information, and it's really just helping everyone to learn and to research. And so I thought that was really nice. When I followed, there were about 1,000 followers. I think now there's almost 10,000. So it's definitely growing. It's just such a cool way to see what people are looking for and learning about, and then who has access and who's able to help them learn more. So I just thought it was a really cool thing that I came across.
Yeah, great tool. This is forever us. So This is awesome.
And then before you click on this, it's going to link you right to a video. So I'll just intro it first. For anyone who doesn't know, Bretman Rock, one of my favorite people of all time. He's an influencer, a beauty guru. He kind of blew up on YouTube as a makeup artist, and now he's just sort of everything. He's like a public figure. He's hilarious and amazing. He recently teamed up with Curology, and if you are on TikTok or YouTube, you've definitely seen an ad for Curology. I've seen at least 1,000 in my lifetime, and they're usually just videos of people in their bathrooms putting it on, explaining how it really helps their skin, and it's really lo-fi, not produced, anything like that. So Bretman said that Curology approached him to do a collab, and he told them that it needed to be more fun or he wasn't going to do it. So they produced this like super fun Y2K video. It's hilarious and amazing, and it is so fun, and it's nothing like I've seen from Curology before, and it made me consider purchasing. So if we want to watch, it's like a minute long if you want to just watch a little bit of it. It's really funny.
Cool, here we go.
Yes, bitch, this is an ad, but trust me, Becky, this shit really works for me. Wow. To be the baddest, you gotta glow like the baddest. Look at me before Curology, girl. What was I even thinking? I wasn't. Now I'm doing the most for my skin with one custom bottle. Don't you dare spend more than $1 a day on skincare. You spent that cash on all the things you love. Like the baddie you are. That's how you play the game. It's gotta be customized. And my Curology, girl, she sees every side of me. If you want to glow up like me, you need Curology. Never settle for a one-size-fits-all because we are not that basic, bestie. Try your first month for free at Curology.com.
I mean, you can see my comment right there that said
It's right
bestie. Like, I'm just obsessed with this. It came on my timeline and I was like, I just love it. The Y2K references, the retro references, and every Curology ad I've ever seen has been so boring. And he said in a video, he was like, I needed it to be more fun, and they agreed, and they allowed me to have like creative freedom. So love it, love him. A really cool example of this Y2K and sort of retro nostalgia that's continuing. So wanted to share.
It's great. I love all the colors too. The purples are right on. Thanks, Chelsea. Next up is Taryn. Hi, Taryn.
Hi, Michael, and hi, everyone. I'm Taryn. I'm a beauty and wellness strategist here. So for my link today, I wanted to share about Paris Hilton taking the troubled teen industry reform to Capitol Hill. So Paris Hilton is calling on Congress to take action against the troubled teen industry, which if you aren't familiar with her documentary at all, I highly recommend just watching it in general. I wasn't a fan before I saw it, and now I love seeing what she's up to. I have so much respect for her. But this is actually a really personal issue for her. So in the documentary, it's a really big point where she talks about her own experience going through these different kind of programs as a teen and all the abuse that she actually endured. So there was a lot of physical, mental, even sexual trauma that her and her former classmates experienced together. So she's now calling on Congress to take action, and she did a press conference on Capitol Hill. Basically, she's helping to work with Congress and lawmakers to craft a Bill of Rights for children and teenagers in congregate care facilities, which would basically protect the emotional and physical rights of youth placed in these facilities. And she also penned an opinion piece for the Washington Post, where she said, ensuring that children, including at-risk children, are safe from institutional abuse, neglect, and coercion isn't a Republican or Democratic issue. It's a basic human rights issue that requires immediate action. And I watched the whole, I have it linked in the doc. It's a little long, it's like 30 minutes, but I watched the whole press conference, and there were some other younger survivors that were there, politicians as well. And it was so moving. And yeah, I just think it's so amazing and so powerful to see her standing up for this issue, shedding light on it, and just advocating for youth rights.
Yeah, it's a big issue. And I think I read she was in 4 facilities in like less than 2 years or something. So
yeah.
right?
And she goes more into detail about it. I also linked the documentary in the doc as well for anyone that wants to see it, but she definitely goes into more detail about it. And it's just crazy to think like what she went through and how like much she's accomplished now too. But like she's talks a lot about like how she still has a lot of trauma from those days as a teen. So yeah, it's really, really incredible that she's shedding light on this issue.
Perfect. Thank you, Taryn. And then you also linked to the documentary, which is on Hulu, I believe, or is it?
It's YouTube.
It's YouTube.
So yeah, the full one. I linked the full one and the trailer if anyone just wants to see a teaser.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up, we have Nia. Hi, Nia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nia Silva, the Materials Director at FS. So for my first link, I came across this really interesting new offering from Peach Airlines. They're a Japanese airline, and they're actually planning to offer these exclusive all-you-can-fly passes, which I've never seen from any other airlines, but maybe you guys all have. Their intention, though, behind this offering is to bring some exclusivity to low-cost travel, almost kind of mirroring the drop culture that sneakers have for hypebeasts, where there's limited stock and this kind of like heightened desirability and luck factor tied into how consumers interact, engage with the brand, which I thought was really interesting from an airline perspective. Typically, budget airlines are seen as low quality, but they're trying to kind of break out of this stigma by offering these all-you-can-fly passes as kind of this exclusive, dramatic offering from the brand. So I thought that was really interesting. I would definitely take a look at the article if you guys can. I've never heard of this from an airline. Maybe you guys have, but I thought
No,
it was really,
I've never heard of it either.
yeah,
Totally. It is a very interesting perspective. So many low-cost airlines popping up now that are so strong in marketing, even here in the US. So it's great to see an
absolutely.
example in Japan, actually.
Yeah. That's my first link. And then for my second one, it's a short video, so I can speak to it really quickly before you play it, Michael. But it's something I came across on YouTube. It's a new series released by the Balvenie Distillery. It's going to be called A Quest for Craft. And it's actually following in the footsteps of a similar former series they had called Raw Craft, which was hosted by the late Anthony Bourdain. So the distillery is taking their viewers again into this world of craft, but this time with Questlove from the famed hip hop group The Roots. So really interesting personality. But for the previous host, so they basically toured the US, visiting kind of like all kinds of craftsmen, tailors, metal casters, even like saxophone designers, which I thought was really interesting. And then just kind of like a myriad of other traditional techniques. So they're going to be doing the same thing with Questlove. And again, called Quest for Craft, so kind of appropriately named. But it looks like a really fascinating, charming kind of show. So definitely check it out if you guys are into things like this. They're going to be dropping episodes throughout the fall, but this is the trailer, so you can play that super short.
When you're on a mission to craft something, you don't care about efficiency or economy. You cater to the soul, not the bank. There's a voice in your head that keeps asking, how can I make this better? Join me on A Quest for Craft, my partnership with the Balvenie, a new digital series about the obsessive, never-ending, whatever it takes journey to create something extraordinary.
I love the name.
Yeah, I think it'd be really good. Yeah, definitely check it out.
Awesome. Looks like my kind of libation too.
Mhm.
You can see it all behind me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nia. Good links. Okay, so mine are up. So my first link is really all about Oscar Isaac being, the major, he's like all over mood boards right now. GQ and High Snobiety wrote about his costume design in Scenes from a Marriage. I highly recommend it. It's a very uncomfortable, awkward show with he and Jessica Chastain, but it is a beautiful, beautiful show. But anyway, this is not about the show. It's really more about the fashion in the show. So right now, the reason why all these people are writing articles about his costumes is because the costume designer, her name is Miyako Belize. She shared some behind the scenes photos of the actor during fittings. And if you know the show, basically he's this like divorced philosophy professor. So this is a whole other evolution in menswear of dadcore. It's kind of like, hot divorced dadcore, if you will. But actually, I find the classics that he's wearing and the silhouette so cool. Let me just quickly go to her Instagram so you can kind of see it there. But she shared some behind the scenes imagery. He wears like really oversized sweaters and like wide wale corduroys and New Balance, and most of the clothing is actually from like Dries, the Fear of God Zinnia collaboration that we all loved last year. There's a couple sweaters featured from that. Loro Piana, very traditional things. But let me just show you some of the imagery here so you can kind of see how she photographed it behind the scenes. But very earth tones, lots of mustards and browns and aubergines. But it's just super cool. It's really traditional, but just on a really cool dude like him, it just really comes to life. And it's kind of definite aesthetic right now that this is the look that everyone loves, the Fear of God, the Xenia sweater. He wears it in the first episode. Anyway, really, really cool. And just loved how they spoke about it. Here's actually some really cool mood board imagery that she did, the designer. I just want to show you really quickly. I'm just really fascinated with costume design, so I love how they kind of like do these books of inspiration with street style, etc. So you can just kind of get an idea for where it comes from. Basically, a lot of the imagery is homage to the original Scenes from a Marriage, which premiered in 1973. So a lot of the inspiration comes from that. And then, not even forgetting the ladies, I just saw this morning. She did this really beautiful book of Jessica Chastain's character, Myra. You can kind of see the inspiration for that. Also very on trend right now with these oversized silhouettes, very 90s influenced. Love the inspiration here as well. So anyway, just a really cool little behind the scenes of that. And then I too have a trailer, and it's actually a wonderful compliment to what Nia just shared with Questlove. So David Chang has a new show on Hulu called The Next Thing You Eat. Really love his shows. Most of you probably remember he did Ugly Delicious on Netflix before. So I can kind of just quickly show you what this show is all about. It's really about the future of food and science when it comes to that. So if I can get to it here, give me 1 second. I'm going to play the trailer for you, but since we're all involved in future thinking things with culture, I thought this was a really cool one to share. So basically, he talks about how science affects our foods. There's 6 episodes. You can kind of see here. We talk about the rise of machines, burgers, a whole episode on burgers, restaurants and how COVID has accelerated the upheaval of the restaurant industry, a whole episode on breakfast, sushi. I just watched that yesterday. And then there's a whole episode on 2050, a look ahead. So here is the quick trailer just so you can kind of see what it's all about.
I think in food science, there is unbelievable ingenuity that is around the corner. When I think about the future, I think about my kids and what are we going to leave them?
Without pain and struggle, you're not David Chang.
Everything's on the table. Technology is going to change food. That is inevitable. We need to recalibrate how we eat. How is this breakfast? Can we build it better? What's the future hold? Oh, what makes it delicious? What ways can restaurants evolve? Why are you asking like I have the answer? Sushi is like 99% frozen. It's like, oh, this restaurant's closer to the water. It's going to be better, fresher.
It's like saying the wine tastes better closer to the grapes.
What if I ordered the bacon ranch cheese fries for breakfast? Food is the last experience that you can't download.
It's designed to make the meat eaters say,
oh my God. We're going to be eating lab-grown meat. You could just recreate like a gooey duck.
You could go even further back and do its ancestor, the dinosaur.
That's real insanity.
Hands up, hands up. Shake it, shake it, shake it.
With restaurants in the future, you're going to see so much innovation.
It can look at the piece of meat. It can know how hot that portion of the grill is. Perfect cooking every time.
It has more than 5, 6, 7 years out.
Oh no, we are installing that into steakhouses this year.
Dave literally, okay. Just do it.
We're going to have climate issues that are going to impact food.
We've come up with salmon without using animals.
I mean, you read about it, like one day.
I didn't know it was today.
Food's going to get crazy interesting. How do you not be inspired by the future?
That's the most hopeful thing I've ever heard you say.
I know. Can you believe that? Maybe I have a concussion or something.
Just do it. I want to know everything about what I'm eating.
Sometimes I do not want to know.
Just do it.
So highly recommended. I've watched almost all the episodes and it's only been out since the 21st, but really, really cool show. And he's a great host. So those are mine. Next up is Nico.
Yeah, hi everybody. I just want to say I love what you shared about Oscar Isaac and Scenes from a Marriage. Like that's definitely gonna be my vibe for like this winter season.
It's so you, Nico. It's so I love it. I love it.
But anyways, Nico here from the culture team. And if you joined us recently, you've probably been seeing me recommend books that I've been reading. So I have two to share today. This one is something that I picked up in a local bookstore here in the DC area called Second Story. And it's basically this industrial warehouse type of property. And they just have an infinite amount of books on like every genre and topic that you can imagine. It's like a scene out of Harry Potter or something, just like piles of books, messy shelves everywhere, super high fixtures and everything. But I picked up this cultural studies textbook actually called Culture and Consumption by Grant McCracken. And this is really going over the origins of consumer society. It shows how consumer goods and consumer behavior are shaped by culture, which is, very fitting being in the culture team. This was a super interesting read. It looks into the cultural systems like advertising, fashion, collecting, lifestyle, and how we use consumption for self-definition. And what I was really expecting was a critical perspective on consumer culture, which is so common these days. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that this had a really neutral take and was just a great foundation in the topic. So one of my favorite chapters was the first chapter, which was about the history of consumption and that dating it back to the 16th century, which is a lot earlier than a lot of texts date the beginning of consumer culture. Usually it's dated to the Industrial Revolution, but it actually talks about it in reference to the evolution of British and French nobility and how they climbed the social ladder. And another chapter talks about patina and how objects acquire them over time, and how this used to be a status symbol for nobility in the 16th century to prove long-standing wealth. But as the industrial age and the fashion cycle were introduced, this was actually completely reversed. And now objects that were newer were imbued with social status. So that was just a really interesting dynamic. And it's especially interesting now because I think we're seeing in a lot of ways patina being embraced again. In our cultural sentiment grow, we talk about alive objects and how they evolve over time through generations and gain stories and a new visual character. And yeah, so that's just the tip of the iceberg. And although this is about 30 years old, it was published in 1990, I still think it's super relevant and a great foundation in this topic.
I was gonna say, wow, 1990. I'm sure this writer, they could totally update it. So much has happened in culture since 1990, but I guess the basics, the cornerstone of things like that don't change. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that you said patina. That's one of my favorite words, but it's so true.
Yeah. So the next book I want to show you, it definitely takes a more critical perspective. This is The Hours Have Lost Their Clock by Grafton Tanner. And this just came out about the second week of October, and I got my hands on it really fast. In this text, Grafton Tanner basically describes nostalgia as the defining emotion of our age. And Tanner goes through the history of nostalgia, the nostalgia industry, some of the political implications of nostalgia and how it's utilized by politicians, and also nostalgia in the context of living through climate disaster and the Anthropocene. So just to give you a fun fact from the book, in the 1680s, nostalgia was coined by a Swedish medic in the army, and his name was Johannes Hofer. And the invention of the word came from the Greek nostos and algia, meaning homecoming and ache. So basically an ache to come home. And it was used to describe this overwhelming number of soldiers who were stationed in the Alps and were feeling this inconsolable sense of homesickness. However, as the word grew in popularity, it began to be demedicalized in the 20th century, and now we accept it as this inevitable kind of ever-present human emotion. And to quote him directly, he says, "We feel nostalgic when we sense a loss of control and when things seem totally..." So the next book that I wanted to show you guys definitely takes more of a critical perspective. This is The Hours Have Lost Their Clock by Grafton Tanner. And in this book, he describes nostalgia as the defining emotion of our age. And Tanner goes through the history of nostalgia, the nostalgia industry, some of the political implications of nostalgia, and also nostalgia in reference to living through climate disaster and the age of the Anthropocene. So just to give you guys a little fun fact from the book, nostalgia was coined by a doctor named Johannes Hofer in the 1680s. He was with the Swedish army in the Alps, and he invented this word nostalgia from the two Greek words nostos and algia, meaning homecoming and ache. And this was used to describe this overwhelming number of soldiers who were stationed in the Alps and were feeling this inconsolable sense of homesickness. However, as the word grew in popularity, it began to be demedicalized in the 20th century, and we now accept it as an inevitable and kind of ever-present human emotion. And to quote Tanner directly, he says, "We feel nostalgic when we sense a loss of control and when things seem totally out of control. Nostalgia can help us to regain this sense of control by reminiscing on the things that once kept us grounded, even if those things never really existed in the first place." And this was a thought that came up for me again and again while reading this book, thinking about my own practices and how they relate to the emotion of nostalgia, like going back to watch Harry Potter or something when I just felt like I wanted to feel comforted or something. And also conversations that we've had here at FS, especially during the time of COVID, where everyone feels a sense of losing control. Nostalgia isn't just a temporary trend, it's an emotion that's gonna bubble up in us time and time again. And while this can be really beneficial psychologically in moderation when we're going through these difficult phases, it's also important to be critical of what we're nostalgic for. Who does that benefit, And yeah.
That's awesome. I love the explanation for the origin of nostalgia. Never knew that, and it makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Everyone always enjoys Nico's book recommendations. I think we're going to definitely try to turn it into some kind of book club that we can do on our Instagram stories. So stay tuned for that. But thank you, Nico. Always very interesting.
Thank you.
All right. Next up from our culture team is Erza.
Hi, everyone. So my first link here is a website and project, and it warps every time you blink. It changes the font, the colors, the formatting, and the content. I'm not sure if it'll work, Michael, because you're already on camera. We don't want to mess anything up anymore. But when it begins, it looks like a Wikipedia manifesto about the use of generative adversarial networks. And that was what was used to create this project. So it's like a deep learning generative model that uses two neural networks, pitting one against the other. So allowing one network, us, to interact with the other, which would be the site. So this artist really wants us to step away from art being simply decorative and wants viewers to participate in the art creation process in an interactive way. So it's similar to like a live painting exhibit or performance art. Her next link is an experiment she did where it blurs the screen whenever you don't have a correct posture. So this is kind of like tech that could even help us for the better. So the artist was saying at this current moment, design doesn't have a dialogue with human. Its behavior is based on user data. So in the future, design will communicate with our environment, our expression, and our feelings. Design will have a dialogue between two active humans. And we're already seeing a lot of this pop up in emotion recognition systems. I've seen websites where, I've turned on the camera and it sensed like if I was happy, mad, sad, and vice versa. So it's really interesting how they're using our cameras and our expressions to really create with AI and machine learning.
Erza, did you try this?
I did.
What happens? What does it do?
So unless you're like standing perfectly, eye level with your shoulders up in a chair in a good position, which I never am. I like to be on the couch and work. The screen goes blurry. But then when you do fix yourself, it gets a little bit clearer and clearer. So you know where you're at on the scale based on how blurry or clear the image is on the screen.
Fascinating. And it's so interesting that both the links you shared are so basic in their design, right? Nothing fancy, right?
There was another one I found that the screen disappears if you don't blink enough. And then it was saying how when we look at our computer screens, we blink 66% less. So it's trying to like make us aware of that, which is really interesting. It's like straining to our eyes. So I'm just really intrigued by, you know, the endless possibilities that tech can really bring into design. And with the rise of NFTs, this is just the beginning, which brings me to this point. This is Bored Ape Yacht Club, and it's really made a name for itself in the NFT community. It's skyrocketing a billion-dollar ecosystem of cartoon apes. And last weekend, the NFT club became tickets to a whole new lifestyle. So hundreds of yacht club art owners gathered together in New York City for exclusive experiences, immersive gallery events, a Halloween party, and 1,000-person yacht party. You know, this whole club is the first to bridge a community of young online investors in the real world, putting a lot more value to these art pieces. So I thought that was really creative of them to do so. It's opening up this new level of like members only, and it really feels like, you know, if Wall Street bets and sneakerheads join together. And I think this is just the beginning of, you know, more NFT and like exclusive community that we're going to see. And the only thing is you just have to own a piece, own a collection, and then you're invited to all of these events.
Wow, that's interesting. It's a really great confirmation. Internally, we've been speaking a lot about breaking of barriers culturally, digitally, et cetera. And so just kind of the whole concept of this like a yacht club, which, you know, is super stuffy and, you know, prevents everyone. It's really interesting. I also read yesterday that Nike finally is getting into the NFT game, selling digital sneakers, et cetera. So you could Google that.
We're going to cover Art Basel this year, and I'm very interested to see like all the upgrades that the art world has made with technology and community in the last 2 years since it was closed last year. So we'll see what they do in that world.
Very interesting. Yeah, stay tuned for that. Awesome. Thank you, Erza. Next from the active team, Tamara.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tamara, and I'm the active first strategist here at FS. So the link I wanted to share today is about Puzzleware. So Puzzleware is a modular DIY kit created by design studio Alma Borealis to invite children to learn to sew their own clothing in the form of a puzzle. So the kit consists out of colorful pieces of wool that are biodegradable, and each piece is designed with lace holes in it to make it easier to assemble different parts to ultimately create a full garment. What I really liked about this project is that not only does it help kids develop new skills and enhance their creativity on a whole new level, but it also wants to raise awareness on how clothing is made and focus on the makers of clothing, making children think about their clothes in a totally different way. The designers also wanted to raise awareness for the clothing making business and the value of materials, and that's why they work only with recycled packaging, and even the instructions are printed on recycled paper. Another thing that was really interesting is they basically provide additional pieces to use when children outgrow their current clothing, to really create flexible pieces that grow with the clothing sizes and are extensible and fully customizable. Yeah, I really thought it was a really interesting project that really blends well with everything that we were talking about, mending and honoring repair and honoring makers, and also all these intentional stitching and piece constructions aesthetics that we have been tracking from some time now.
This is so cool. One of my favorite links from today. Let's definitely make sure that we get this on the kids' team's radar so that we could do a hot now on this on the website. But beautiful colors. And I see what Nico says. This should for sure be a basic skill that we all learn early on.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that.
Absolutely.
Love it. Thank you. That's great. All right, Danny.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danny. I'm the women's strategist here at FS. So my link today isn't too visual, but it's a great first for the luxury sector of the industry. So Chloe has recently been named the first luxury house to achieve B Corp certification, one of the most demanding certifications that evaluates brands' social and environmental impact. So this is a fairly well-known certification, as brands like Ben & Jerry's and Patagonia have all attained it. But as a quick refresher, Inc. magazine describes a certification as as companies go through a lengthy process of confirming the presence and continuation of the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance, governance, transparency, and legal accountability. So of course, this furthers Chloe's sustainability commitment under Gabriella Hearst's leadership by utilizing lower impact materials like those upcycled from previous collections, as well as incorporating the unique works of local artisans from around the world into their one-of-a-kind pieces as part of their Chloe Craft initiative, which they just launched during their Spring/Summer 22 collection. Although on the other end of it, it's always important to look at things from multiple angles. So in this end, greenwashing, of course, has become an issue amongst brands and their marketing tactics. And there's a report on our culture section about greenwashing on our site. So if you are a subscriber, definitely I recommend reading that. But nonetheless, this is a positive step forward. And I was talking to a colleague, and will probably likely spur more houses and fashion brands to pursue this process of getting B Corp certified as the industry continues to commit towards a culture of accountability.
I love this. This is so, so good. And greenwashing is so important. I had actually not really heard much about the term before we started talking about it internally, and we put that report up in the culture. But it's a really awesome topic that you should explore more if you guys are not familiar with.
For sure. And to see such a major luxury house like Chloe attain it is going to kind of set the green light for other brands to go ahead and do so on their ends. And I think it's just a really great first step.
Yes, for sure. I know on the other side, Xenia is another amazing big brand, fabric forward company that's also soon to achieve this as well. So
cool.
Very, very important. Thanks, Danny. A couple more today. Mallory from our beauty team. Hi, Mallory.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mallory. I'm a beauty and wellness strategist here at Fashion Snoops. And I just stumbled across this link last night, and I'm already really more obsessed than I should be. So this is a game called Unpacking. It just launched yesterday. If you scroll down, Michael, you can see there a little intro video. If you just want to play a few minutes of it, you get a sense of the gameplay. Basically, you unpack virtual rooms. You can just unpack a room. You can unpack a whole house. And as you can see from this, it is just mesmerizingly satisfying. It's just kind of, it combines that ASMR, that need for organization, that like virtual real life simulation like The Sims. And it's also just an interesting reflection of the life and times we live in. I mean, there are plenty of things I can unpack and organize right now in reality, but this is just much more appealing. And there are two really interesting links that I linked also in the doc. You have access to the doc links. And one of them just really speaks to how this game captures both our need for some sense of order in our lives and also kind of that soothing Marie Kondo organization, and how by organizing our spaces, we organize our minds. And it's just interesting to see this play out in a virtual environment as well. Super, super satisfying. It talks the importance of objects and how objects are just so meaningful to us. And when we unpack into a new space, it's not just a simple act of organizing. It's also, we're very intentional about where we place objects, where, you know, what position of, what pictures we put on our fridge, the symbolism of objects. So definitely check out the two articles I also linked. They're very, very interesting. And it's a sweet little perspective on this game that is going to take over my life now, I'm sure, for a few days.
It's so cool. And Chelsea's right. It's way more fun than doing it in person.
Yes.
I want to ask you, are you able to repack or can you only unpack?
No, so I've only unpacked, but
Okay.
repacking, I think that we need to, get in touch with the game developers because I equally love packing items.
Right.
So I think that that should be the next extension of this game, because like packing for a vacation in a game form is just like high entertainment for me. So
Yeah, no, I love that. I have a 16-month-old at home, and while he's too young for video games, he very much enjoys putting things back into spaces. He's very into it right now. He loves putting everything back, which I'm very happy with because I love order. So love that. But this is great. Thanks, Mallory. And there are the other links. You guys will get this so you can see them. All right. And then last but not least, we're going to end today's show and tell with Melissa Moylan. Hi, Melissa.
Hey, Michael. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Moylan, VP of Women's at FS, joining you from Los Angeles. My share today is an artist duo. They go by Studio Drift, and they showed this exhibition called Shy Synchrony. That was a site-specific exhibit that they installed in Basel, Switzerland, which I think was a little bit over a month ago. And I thought it was really beautiful. I think I'll speak to it a little bit first and then we could watch it because I think there's something super therapeutic about it. And I feel like I could watch it over and over again. What they realized is that they felt there was this need for alignment with our environment as well as the return to communal interaction. So you could just go to the most recent one that they posted, Michael, and we could watch that.
In our practice and during the last 15 years, we learned constantly by picturing and not very clearly trying to mimic nature, but just trying to create a sense of feel. And I could never express it. I was always expressing it with my hands or with movement because I can't sometimes say it in words. I just know how I want to feel. When we then found the right movements and found the right systems to create those movements, they were actually already there.
So I just thought that was so beautiful. The way that they did it is actually just moving the skylights in the air. And I think it had, like, there's something so soothing about it. It feels like, to me, it felt like it evoked something like dance, like you were watching like ballet or something. And that one actually shows they held a yoga practice there, which I think is so genius because it just allows you to feel and share the experience with other people.
Oh my God, it's so soothing.
Yes, like I could live in this while Mallory's going to be in her video game unpacking, but I'll be here.
Things are zen to what zen to you is different to someone else. So that's really, really awesome. Wow, that's really great. Listen, if Jerry Lorenzo follows them, they're legit. Wow, very, very cool. Thank you, Melissa. So thanks, guys. Thank you for sticking with us through some technical difficulty days. We really appreciate it. If you are a non-FS team member and you'd like the chance to share at a future show and tell, please email me, michael@fashionsnoops.com, with your intro and what you would love to share, and we can consider you for a future show and tell. Otherwise, we will see you in about 4 weeks on Wednesday, December 1st for our last show and tell of 2021. Thanks, guys, for joining us. We'll see you next time.